You're watching RMC Stuff, 5 videos in 5 days of things that don't really fit anywhere else in the channel. This is day 2. Enjoy.
This episode is supported by MonsterJoysticks.com. Level up your Raspberry Pi with our all-in-one arcade kit using genuine Sanwa arcade parts. And OneClickPrint.com for your photos on canvas, acrylic, gifts and more. Local craftsmen and global delivery.
Hello cave dwellers. Comic books and computers. It's not unheard of for them to come together, and just like in the movies, there are plenty of video game comic book adaptations, as well as anomalies like Microsoft Comic Chat. Remember that one? What you may not know though is that in 1980, when the first generation of mass-produced home computers were fighting for our attention, it was DC Comics who Radioshack turned to, with arguably their most famous superhero, to win us over with their teaching aids.
Radioshack had been peddling their electronics using the comic format long before they had computers in their product range. This 1981 comic, the science fair story of electronics and the discovery that changed the world, was first released in 1972 and was updated into the 1990s. In it, a teacher takes her students through the history of science, covering such topics as space, astronomy, electronics and computers, with of course the emphasis on the TRS80 range when it was released. The history of science took us through the discoveries and inventions of Nikola Tesla, Benjamin Franklin, Michael Faraday and Alessandro Volta on the development of the electricity network and batteries. A Radioshack branded battery there of course. We've also got Samuel Morse sending his first telegram using the telegraph sounder with what would become Morse code, and we quickly progress from the Edison light bulb through to Nobel Prize winners Bardeen, Shockley and Brattain on the invention of the transistor. These history lessons are all tied together neatly to show us just how great, you guessed it, the Radioshack TRS80 microcomputer is.
So, you can see that microcomputers, meaning small in size, are reshaping our way of life. The computer age is here, but it really began almost 200 years ago.
And the whole package really is unashamedly proud to be American. It's published in Fort Worth, Texas, and our plaid-clad Texan friends conclude by telling us,
yes, our country must continue to explore, to discover, to invent, to pave the way for future generations. This means many exciting opportunities for young science explorers. Would you like a career in science?
How very wholesome. A little too wholesome perhaps for some young minds, which is perhaps why Radioshack turned to none other than DC Comics in 1980 through to 1983 to release 3 comic books featuring Superman and the TRS80 computer WizKids. In 1980s, the computer that saved Metropolis, the world's greatest superhero hurtles into action once more, while several miles below, 2 young heroes sit at their TRS80 computers, their fingers flying urgently across the keyboards.
This is Superman's last heroic act. After he blows away the tornado, he won't be able to think straight.
The comics are illustrated by James Starlin, who drew for both Marvel and DC Comics, and Dick Giordano, who was the editor of Batman for a spell before becoming executive editor at DC. And it tells us the story of Superman, who's been drafted in to teach a computer science lesson to a less than enthusiastic class, including Alec, who is the most vocal of them all.
Someone wake me up when he's finished. History and computers are boring enough by themselves, but together, good night.
So Superman takes the kids onto the roof, naturally, to tell them how great computers are, and some familiar cells reappear from the earlier science fair comic we saw, such as our Nobel Prize winning transistor creators. Superman then concludes the lesson with the most important lesson to anyone who wants to learn about computers.
Microcomputers like the TRS80 are easy to operate when you follow instructions in the user's manual.
Yes, Superman tells us to RTFM. Thanks very much, Superman. What happens next is a classic city-saving superhero story of tornadoes sending innocent citizens into the sky and Superman saving them, while Miss Wilson teaches the children how to create a Hello World program. But soon we learn that the tornado was unleashed by villain Major Disaster and contained millions of microscopic kryptonite crystals, which Superman has inhaled, rendering most of his superpowers, well, unaffected, but his brain has been befuddled. And that's okay, because our Whizz kids have now progressed from Hello World to calculating the trajectory of a falling airliner in a 63 mph headwind. Yes, they're performing all the calculations Superman's broken brain would normally process on their TRS80s, and I'm guessing they didn't perform the calculations to too many decimal places.
The TRS80s score again by following the computations you two sent back.
And of course the whole saga concludes with Major Disaster being taken into custody and the TRS-80 takes the limelight with Superman on the sidelines. This being a teaching aid, of course, there are plenty of adverts scattered through, such as this cool device, the Network One. It's the magic way to bring your class together, apparently. Instead of using cassette tapes, the device can squirt a centrally stored program on disk into 16 TRS-80s at once in the classroom. A bit like the Nano network popularised by Thomson computers in French classrooms. Radioshack went on to repeat the formula in 1981 with guest hero Supergirl this time teaching us about the invention of the transistor and those familiar faces again. And once again the TRS-80 saves the day, but by the end it's quite clear Superman is getting pretty tired of Alec's attitude.
For once, Alec, you said something everybody else will agree with.
It all happened again once more in 1982, this time with Superman and Wonder Woman guest starring. And in the same year we saw the Whizz Kids get their own dedicated publication, which was released annually into the 90s, and it becomes a bit like Scooby-Doo but with Tandy computers. So there you have it. Those times Superman was useless without the aid of smart Alec and an 8-bit home computer. And a pretty valiant attempt it was, I think, at enthusing young would-be computer users by using familiar DC comic characters for leverage. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a TRS-80. Thank you for watching, and a big thank you to Adam who sent the comics in to me. Take care.